This is my one-wheel GT turned VESC using the floatwheel GTV kit. It's great. Love it so far. The one issue I have with it is I love me some RGB. Hopefully you can see that. Foot pads. And before I had the shout out Oak City Shred Solutions. I think it's Oak City one wheel now, but whatever. Before I had the electrolytes in it, and they were great. The float wheel kit comes with these things. I do not like these. They're basic cob LEDs with almost magenta diodes, and I really want the red, but more than that I want customization in RGB. This is my solution to that. Basically it's a step-down converter, a DC to DC converter that converts the 75 volts, I believe, of the GT battery, and any battery bigger than that you might install with your GTV. Drops that down to 5 volts and uses it to power an ESP that's running WLED, as well as power the lights themselves. This is completely separate power from the float wheel kit, meaning if you have the stock GT bar, the float wheel kit will continue to power the 4 cob LEDs, the 4 brights, if you will, on both sides of the board if you choose to use 2 of these, as well as separately power and control the 11 RGB diodes on the stock bar. Or alternatively, you could run a tailscreen HD or HB designed by me, front or rear, or both. This is a tailscreen HD. It has 38 individual LEDs as opposed to 11 on the stock bar, and the tailscreen HB has 29 that are as bright as the stock bar. The controller itself has a separate 5-volt out pin as well as a button pin. 5-volt out pin if you wanted to use the 5 volts to power something else on your board. I personally have mine powering 2 Cush Glows as well as a USB-C port to charge my phone on the board. The button can be used to toggle the lights on and off, as well as cycle through different presets that you can load through WLED onto the ESP. Okay, install is super simple. Tools you're going to need are a T25, TP25 if you want to be exact, but T25 will work just fine. I'm using an impact driver. I do not recommend power tools. I use them anyway. I'm a hypocrite. You're going to need a 5-point security bit, as well as as well as a T5 screwdriver. All of this is included in the float wheel kit, and you should still have it. If you bought the bring your own stock GT lights version, this is going to be super simple. You only need to open the controller box. So start by removing the fender delete and the foot pad, and then go ahead and pull off your controller lid. Remember to be careful with the lid and unplug the antenna before you actually pull it all the way up. Once you have the lid off, the first thing you're going to want to do is unplug the XT60 and pull out the old float wheel light bar. Replace the light bar with your stock GT one, or if you choose to, one of my tail screens, but in the front I would recommend running a stock GT light. In the kit you're going to get a pair of XT60s soldered together with a JST plug coming out. That goes in between the female XT60 on your controller and the male XT60 coming from the battery. This will spark, so be careful with it. Then you're going to want to remove these 2 screws from your controller. Installing the light controller is as simple as putting it in and putting the 2 screws back in. Okay, once you have everything physically installed, you can start plugging in the cables. It's super simple. Everything's labeled. You take the long cable coming from the headlight, plug that into the HL out port on the RGB controller. You take the balance connector coming from the battery, plug that into the TL out port. Then the short 8-pin connector goes back into the status light from the float wheel. If you ordered the BYO stock GT light kit, then you're done. You can go ahead and put the lid back on. Just be careful of the Bluetooth antenna. Once you have everything put back together, go ahead and power up the board, check the lights, make sure everything is working. The rear should have a preset specifically for the rear light bar that you chose. And everything looks good here. If you purchased a tail screen kit or you're going to be installing one later, the installation process for the back is exactly the same as swapping the stock light bar for the float wheel light bar. The one modification you do need to make is removing the struts that are placed in between every LED on the stock GT bar. The stock bar, there's going to be struts in between every one of those little LEDs. You need to cut those out so that it doesn't block every 4 or 5 of these LEDs.